Welcome to another segment of the Business of Aesthetics podcast. I'm Michael Walker, your host for this episode. Before we get started, I want to thank all of our incredible listeners from the United States, Canada, and around the globe. We couldn't do this without your continuous support. A special thank you also goes out to our sponsor for this episode, Echo Marketing. With over 20 years of experience, Echo Marketing is a leader in digital marketing services for aesthetic practices. In fact, as part of this podcast, they are offering our listeners a complimentary digital marketing consultation, which will include a tailor-made 12-month digital strategy for your practice. You'll be able to head over to www.businessaesthetics, all one word, .org/MSM to book your consultation. I'll share more about this opportunity later in our podcast, and you'll be able to pick up that link as well as wherever you've picked up this podcast. So without further delay, let's dive into our theme for the day, Legal Must-Knows for Aesthetics Practices with Sara. Sara, it is great to have you with us today.
Thanks so much, Michael. Happy to be here.
Yeah, let me share a little bit of your background with our listeners. So Sara is the managing partner at Lengea Law?
Yeah, Lengea Law. But
Lengea Law, thank you.
As I say to my clients, I don't care what you call me as long as you call me.
Nice. I like that law. I'll give you credit the first time, then I'm using it. Lengea Law. Okay. A leading healthcare law firm that provides practical legal solutions for med spas, IV hydration businesses, mental health practices, and dental offices. With over 20 years' experience, Sara is not only a seasoned healthcare lawyer, but also a business strategist and author. She wrote Med Spa Confidential, an Amazon bestseller, which provides in-depth guidance on how to start, grow, and sell a medical spa business. Her legal expertise has helped hundreds of clients navigate the complexity of healthcare, regulations, contracts, and intellectual property protection, ensuring compliance while scaling their business. Beyond her legal career, Sara has been the CEO and COO of multimillion-dollar ventures, including an e-commerce company that achieves 13 plus million revenue in just 2 years, and a medical aesthetics practice that expanded from one room to 12 locations with over $13 million in annual revenue. Her experience uniquely positions her to help aesthetic businesses thrive in an increasingly regulated industry. In today's episode, we'll be discussing key legal challenges in aesthetic medicine, compliance risk, and the best strategies for protecting your practice while ensuring long-term success. So Sara, as I said, it's great to have you. So let's start with your journey. What led you to specialize in healthcare law, and particularly in the aesthetics and med spa industry?
Well, I started in this industry a little bit over 10 years ago, and I saw that this industry was really ripe for growth. And I had tried one of these aesthetic treatments myself, and I looked at my face and I said, wow, okay, I can't wait to do this again because I love the way that it looks. And I felt like it's interesting having an industry selling products, making people feel good. And the people have to repeat the treatments over and over again. So it's not just like a one and done type of thing. And then my husband at the time was starting an aesthetics practice and needed somebody to help him run it. And so it was a great opportunity having my experience running a business and being a lawyer. I said, sure, yeah, I can do aesthetics. I like Botox. Let me try.
That's it. And the rest is history, as they say.
And the rest is history. Yeah, it was the perfect project. We started with one room, and I like starting small. Even now, whenever I talk to clients, I'm always like, you don't need to have a big build out. You don't need to have $1 million in the bank. You could start literally with one room. And it was fun growing something like growing a child from beginning to seeing them grow up and, graduate and go off to college.
And I think the fact that you grew it from small to large or larger, that experience is huge because, as you say, a lot of people buy a practice, come into one, or, there's really good underpinning when you start small and learn and you learn not to sweat the small stuff, but learn how to deal with it, and I totally, you said something about how you really liked the treatment. I heard something the other day, an aesthetic, med spa owner was talking about, it was plastic surgery we were talking about specifically, but we were talking about, says, there's a point where she used in this case a woman that when she's had a couple of kids and she's gotten a little old, she looks in the mirror and she says, "I'm not familiar with that person." I thought that's brilliant. I mean, it's male, female, it's whatever. I said, there's that. What else gives you the opportunity to get familiar again with that person? And I love that line. I just think that just really struck me as a powerful line. And the way you just described that, sir, for yourself, I can identify with that. Haven't had Botox, haven't had any treatments, but I do have, actually, I did have skin cancer ways back, so I experienced plastic surgeons, but that's a whole other story. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of today, and let's talk about why is having a compliant legal setup crucial for med spas and aesthetic practices?
Well, I think of legal and compliance as the foundation of a house. So it's really not so important to have a great foundation if you're on very stable land and nothing ever happens and there's no erosion and you have no neighbors who are looking at your house and thinking like, why is it like a little tilted? And you have no clients who come in and are like, well, like, hey, am I safe here? So I think that legal is really the foundation of a successful business, and it could really bring your whole house down if it's not done correctly. So a lot of times people starting small don't invest anything in legal, or they just get some forms from the internet or from some other source, and the forms don't really keep up with where they've grown, or they never really protected them in the first place. And then one investigation ends up costing $50,000 in legal fees, and people are like, "Oh gosh, like, I should have just spent the $5,000 to do this correctly from the start." So that's why.
Yeah, that's thank you. I had I guess 2.5 years ago, I sold my IP for my company to an American company. But when I started the company, though, when I started out, it was as a coaching company. We ended up being involved doing coaching and in-person events all over North America at offices. We developed coaches and all that kind of thing. But what was interesting is that my lawyer said, what's your vision for this? Like, what do you think is going to happen? I never thought about what would happen as it happened. Like, I never thought I would sell my IP. I never that specifically. I understand that could happen, but I just never. And he just brought all the different variables that could come into play, and so we need to set up. We want to create something that's going to make that easy when that happens. And it was amazing, Sarah. Like, when the sale came and we did, it was like I went back to my lawyer and I bought him a weekend away, because I said, it was amazing how nobody had any challenge. Everything just worked and everything fit together, even though we were doing the US law and Canadian law. It was amazing. So I can totally, I support what you're saying about having that foundation, but not just the foundation for today, but a foundation that's going to set you up for success tomorrow and for whatever succession planning you have within the organization itself. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. And congratulations to you for having a great lawyer and also, setting yourself up for success. I think, yeah, a lot of it has to do with you want to plan to be successful, right? And so set yourself up for success means investing in some resources, like marketing too, right? Like, unfortunately, in many businesses, people are not just going to walk in through your door just because you have a nice looking door or they see a fancy machine inside. It's just not going to happen, right? You need to market. And the same thing with legal. Like, you're just not going to know automatically what to do, how to set it up correctly. There are all these laws, like the prohibition on the corporate practice of medicine, that most people have never heard of, and nor should they. It's not something that's part of our daily lives. But if your practice is not set up correctly, once you are successful, it could mean big trouble.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think what's that saying? We're not in Kansas anymore. From Wizard of Oz. Being a generalist doesn't work. You need to be very focused, and you need to be able to, I like to say, take 80% of you and focus on the 20% of what you're great at. But then you need to bring those support services like legal, like marketing, like tech, like HR, and bring those pieces around you that help set you up for success. there was a time where everybody did everything, and it was okay, and a handshake was a deal, but things have evolved, and it's just that there's a lot more structure, a lot of system, but it's just a global marketplace where you need protection, as you're pointing out. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah,
That's your
and in a
job.
marketplace where someone can just file an anonymous complaint against you because they're jealous of you, and it doesn't have to be substantiated, but you will get investigated because of it. It's just better to be protected.
Absolutely. I'm a mediator for the college veterinarians, and so I deal with that. And it's amazing what people want to sue you for or make an issue over.
Mhm.
So let's talk about legal pitfalls. That's a term. What are some of the biggest legal pitfalls that aesthetic businesses face, and how can they avoid them?
I think the biggest one is not having the right paperwork or not having any paperwork when they start. So people either download some paperwork from the internet or get it from their friend or some business consultant, perhaps that shouldn't be practicing law, and they start their business and the paperwork is just not there or is deficient. So people are entering into partnerships that they're not supposed to be entering into, or they have a partnership that could be legal, but it's not on any paperwork. And then the partners start fighting and no one knows or no one can prove who owns what. So I think the first thing is not having the right paperwork or not having any paperwork when you're starting. That's a big one. Another big one is not having the right paperwork between you and your clients. So that's things like consents and protocols and pre and post treatment instructions, which protect you and protect your clients. Then the client could never say, well, you didn't tell me not to go, in the sun after this laser, or you didn't tell me that if I have, herpes, I can't do this particular treatment. So all the paperwork, having it in place on day one protects you from, bad things happening in the future. And I think the third thing is not having the right paperwork or having incorrect paperwork between you and your staff. As you get bigger, as you start hiring people and you don't have the right contracts in place between you and them, if things go badly, you are really exposed because there's nothing protecting you. If you have to just look at the law and go to court to protect yourself, it's a multi-year battle that's most of the time not worth it and extremely stressful and very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, some of what you're saying is arguably common sense, but where it becomes emotional sense is when we just focus. Well, I don't think I can afford that, or I don't think that it's too much, or whatever. Yeah, is like there's two questions I love to pose. What's at risk to invest in quality marketing, legal, HR, tech support, and which is you can figure that out. The second question is more telling: is what's at risk not to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's that downstream. We don't, it's always a sunny day till it's not. How many gamblers talk about how much it costs to win that $1,000 jackpot? I mean, there's just this downside. It's our human nature. But this is your livelihood. Now, I had a question for you that I don't know. In Canada, we have independent legal advice requirements, and I do a lot in my mediation reputation. I often see where one of the common denominators is when partners are setting it up, they've just walked by the ILA and just gone, hey, yeah, we're good, let's just sign the documents. And becomes the sticking point 10 years, 15 years down the road that we're mediating through. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to have their own legal representation. So, for example, if someone's working with a medical director and the medical director gives you a contract from their, medical director company, don't just use that contract. You have to have your own lawyer review it for how it benefits you and also how it could hurt you, like what you're getting locked into and who's going to own what once this relationship ends. So, yeah, it's a little more expensive to have your own lawyer, but like I mentioned, a typical legal startup cost when people use us is about $5,000 for a small practice and like about $6,500 to $7,500 for a medium-sized practice. That's not so expensive compared to other costs for the practice, and it's so protective compared to how much it would cost to have a dispute once you don't have the right paperwork. So yeah, it's important to have your own legal guidance for sure. And it's like having someone in your corner who really knows like all the things that can go wrong that you're not thinking of today, but they're very possible.
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, boy, your prices are very reasonable. But
Thank you.
this idea of being in their corner, like a lawyer, that's the cool thing is that a lawyer is not an adversary. They're essentially your advocate for walking through the journey of all the things that could go bump in the night. And you don't have to become an expert on knowing those things or expecting or trying to guess when they're going to happen. That's that relationship. I mean, it's just, I think it's like we tend to think of some of these, like, would you just, because your car insurance is too much, or your business interruption insurance is too much, or your building insurance, or maybe even your liability is too much, I'm just going to cancel that. I'm not going to do it. Now, why do we not look at legal costs and marketing costs and tax system costs the same way? Because they are all integrated for success or failure.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have somebody who's your advocate, not, someone who's working for someone else. So always making sure that everything that you're signing before you sign it gets reviewed, because quite frankly, like everything is negotiable. So that small line in the contract that you may have not noticed when starting your business could really hurt you later. So just really important to talk to someone to protect you.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So what are some of the common compliance mistakes that you see in the industry, and what are the risks of not addressing them?
The biggest one that we see today is improper procedures in a medical practice. So a lot of times people get busy and procedures get skipped, or they were never there in the first place. So the most common one, and that's very easy for medical boards and nursing boards to spot, is not having what's called good faith exams done for patients. So for example, if someone's getting a wrinkle relaxer, in every state, that's considered a medical procedure. And that medical procedure, before it could be administered by a registered nurse, it needs a good faith exam to be performed by a prescriber, which in most states would be someone like an NP or a PA or an MD. But a lot of times this step is skipped. And when it's skipped, the boards say that the standard of care hasn't been met. And then everyone gets in trouble. The MD who was involved, the RN who was involved, the business owner who was involved. So that's a very common compliance mistake that we see. I would say that's number one.
So before you move off that, just so why do you think what would be the reason to skip it? Why would somebody skip it? If they didn't know better, I could understand that, but they probably do. But why would somebody skip it?
It's cheaper, right?
Okay.
Like
All right.
practically speaking, people may say, well, I have a registered nurse, I'm paying her whatever I'm paying her. I don't want to have another employee or team member for this other thing. So people think, well, I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm just going to have this kind of provider, and that's it. So I think that's one reason. Two, sometimes people are understaffed, or the wrong patient at the right time. Kind of Friday night, 6:00, the nurse practitioner already went home. The patient comes in and they want to get treated, and they're a new patient. A practice doesn't want to turn them away. But that new patient could be an incognito person from the medical board. They're allowed to do that, and that's what they do. They literally send somebody in saying like, "Hi, like, I'm Martha. I'm here to get Botox. Can I get it today?" And right when you're about to inject them, they're like, "Oh, here's my badge from the medical board. You're under investigation." Imagine the feeling of that.
Wow. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not fun.
So, again, so in my world, we actually we quantify the cost of conflict in a business. We can tell you we can actually figure out what the cost of conflict is in your organization through the entire system and give you a number and tell you what that is. And we said, but if we put in a conflict management system, so to speak, this is what you could save. This is what it'll do with that system. So in this system, if I reverse engineer what you just say, there's the downside cost of that investigation, the impact on your brand, the impact on your people, emotional, all that stuff. And then ultimately, if your fines and all that coming back, and if you took that cost versus that cost of having that step and doing it at the front end, what do the numbers look like? And of course, we say, well, it won't. We just did recently. I did a spyware a webinar, and they were talking about the medical industry is the most vulnerable for ransomware because they've got the best stuff to ransom. But it's like, how many people say, "Oh, I didn't know that was going to be. I thought it only happened to other people." I think that's part of the reality of it. That as I say, we're not in Kansas anymore. There's stuff goes on that we need another set of eyes, I think, on it. That's kind of and a set of eyes that reflect each dimension of our organization. Now, somebody's going to tell me, yeah, those eyes are going to run me right out of business. Well, there's common sense. But at least having that discussion with somebody. Don't necessarily have to go. At least knowing more what your options are. I think that's the other. Maybe that's it, Sarah. Just having that conversation, so you know more. You don't have to say yes, but you know more what your options are. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just talk. How should clinics legally and professionally handle negative online reviews while protecting their reputation? This is good. This is whatever you say here, I'm taking it to other fields.
Yeah. Well, in healthcare, it's particularly important not to reveal confidential patient data when replying to reviews. So when someone leaves you a long review about their treatment, you never want to imply or confirm that they actually got the treatment, even if they themselves breach their own confidentiality. So you never want to say, well, actually, we did this and it was great, or we didn't do this. The way I suggest replying to a review is saying something like, in order to assist our team, we weren't able to locate your record in our system. In order to assist our team in finding your information, please give us a call to make sure that this is a legitimate complaint against our actual business. Something like that. So to the public, you're giving them the message that, hey, maybe this person didn't even come in. And then privately trying to resolve the matter with the person. So I think a lot of times when people leave a negative review, there is an opportunity to make things right. So engaging in a negotiation with the person and saying like, hey, asking them a scary, open-ended question like, I understand you're not happy with the service. What can we do to make it better? A lot of times people are scared to say, well, if you just give me a refund or if you just give me $500, I'm going to remove my review. They feel ashamed. They feel like you should know that already. But I think by asking them an open-ended question, like, what can I do to make this better? You're giving them the opportunity to tell you. And a lot of times the resolution is something relatively small, like $500 or $200 or a refund or up their treatment. And in that case, I should recommend just doing that rather than continuing the fight, even if you're 100% right. I see that you're going to say something, so go ahead.
No, yeah, I would totally agree with you. I deal with the professional and the complaint as a mediator in certain organizations, and never have I ever seen a complaint, the actual essence of the complaint, be the basis for the problem.
Mm-hmm. It's how you made them feel. It's, person feeling unimportant, ignored, less than, discriminated against, all that kind of stuff. Especially in today's world where people are, I think, in some ways more sensitive to these things, where sometimes people feel powerless and their one way to get after you, who they perceive as this big business owner, is to put it on the internet. So yeah, a lot of times it has nothing to do with you being a bad provider. It's more about accidentally making this person feel bad.
And as you said, though, I had never acknowledging the treatment and how you approach that. As to our listeners, I'm thinking that's a super, super valuable piece of advice, because we just have this desire to say, well, we didn't do that. We didn't know you. No, we didn't do it that way. I know we didn't. Well, now you've confirmed it. And so, it's the other thing I always say when there's a complaint, it's always, you always go, you don't go write it in an email, you write it in Word, and you write out what you're going to say, everything. Every emotion you want to put in, write the whole thing out, everything you want to say to that person, and then go back and decide what you're actually going to publish. And
Yeah, I think sometimes.
because emotionally, we've got this thing going on, like somebody's harming this is our business, our baby, and no, we didn't do this. Because people, we try and tell them, no, just a couch. I said, well, let's get it all out. Just don't publish it. Just get it out, and then talk to somebody who are you sharing that with. And then in this case, if it's something that has liability potential, then how are you connecting with your lawyer on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people say, well, I'm going to sue my customer for defamation, for writing this bad review. But the reality on the ground is suing someone for defamation is extremely difficult and very expensive and extremely discovery heavy, meaning let's say you file a complaint and the lawyer helps you do that. And let's say that I like to speak in real numbers. So let's say that costs $2,500. That's not going to get you anything so far. You will file something and they could ignore it 1,000 times. You're only maybe going to get something once you do discovery, where you ask them questions like, what happened here? And they produce paperwork, and they could submit 1,000 documents, 1,000 pages that are not relevant. You're going to have to pay a lawyer to review those things. 2 years later, you may still be in your defamation lawsuit, or maybe 10 years later. So it's really not worth, because defamation is usually not so black and white. And because truth is a defense to defamation, it's extremely hard to prove. So the defamation angle is not an effective one, in my opinion. I always tell my clients, okay, the $20,000 you would spend on a defamation lawsuit, spend that on marketing your business. Much better use of money.
Exactly. You just remind me, I used to own a chain of flower shops, of all things. And I bought one, same as you. I'm like you. You're cut from the same cloth. I bought one and I grew it into a whole chain and a whole bunch of other things too. But we knew we were going to have a problem. Like, we knew we were going to have problems. Like, we have a perishable product we're selling.
Right.
And one day Sarah's going to come in and say, those roses are only lasted 3 days, or this thing wasn't what I expected, or the colors were this, or what. There's 101 things that happen in a flower shop that are directly relatable to the perishable product. So I knew that. So I know I'm going to have a problem. So I thought, well, I can either. So how do I want to turn this problem, and like, kind of like judo, how do I want to take the energy of the problem and move it somewhere? Mm-hmm. So what I did is I went to our team and I said, my team is predominantly women, which, when you're dealing with problems and when you're dealing with emotions, women are much, much more stable than we are as men sometimes. Just going to say that. I'm a man, so I'm talking about myself. But what's interesting is I shared with them, I said, here's if you guys can go ahead and if you can convert that problem into 3 new customers, I'll give you a spa retreat. And I gave them some tools. I said, here's your latitude in terms of flower, what they could do, and off went. So I did it for 6 months, and I had to stop the plan because I was going to go bankrupt. Everyone loved it, and we had people come in, and we became the conversation of the town. That's the place. If they love complaints, and like, literally, we turned this whole. I make it sound perfect and wonderful, but was there some customers that we never could turn the corner? Absolutely, but that's life. But I think it's about being proactive to it. It's about taking an approach that you're going to have people that are going to be upset, that there's things that are going to happen. So how do you inculcate into your relationship culture ways to turn that around? Plus, they're going to bring their friends back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's cool. I think that, when you said flower business, the first thing I thought is perishable product. Oh no, like, what a stressful business, right? If the weather is bad and people can't get to your store or whatever. Yeah,
It is. But having said that, though, it's vertically integrating it into other things that take out the sharp edges of perishable product. So, but it was just like I've always thought. Like I think, there's a book Simon Sinek wrote about the why. What?
Oh yeah,
Right?
one of my favorite books of all time, and
Right.
so short. I mean,
Isn't it? Yeah, if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. You've probably heard us talk about this before on the podcast, because really, what it's like, his whole philosophy. It's like to distill it down. If you think of Dell, I'm not promoting Dell computers, but I'll use their name. Dell Computers, they have a marketing plan, a business, and basically they sell computers and they invite you to buy one. Apple, what they did is they said, we're going to create a whole new culture and life experience and how we do life and do it together in a different way. Do you want to join us? And oh, by the way, we sell iPads and iPhones and computers. The why was the relationship. The why was the community. The why was this new direction. And I think that's, you're not just selling aesthetic services, you're selling a lifestyle culture that people want to be part of. And it extends right into this customer complaint. That's got to be part of that model.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even for me too, like my why is I really like helping people start businesses and helping people become successful. Like that makes me so happy. So I don't think of it as like I'm providing legal advice. It's more like I'm helping people become independent, become business owners, and live their best lives. And that makes me like super happy knowing that I played a small part in that. And then my customers, right? They're not coming to my customer to just get rid of their wrinkles. They're coming because they're going to see their ex-boyfriend after 10 years. Their best friend is getting married. They looked in the mirror and they don't like the way they look anymore. And it's very personal. And understanding that about, my customers and having had a med spa with customers and seeing all the different customers and how we made them feel. I think we get to do something special here. So it's fun being able to protect people doing this special thing.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, your our coaching model was we what we called our and developed was influential leaders and influential leadership, and we defined influential leadership as giving somebody something they didn't even know they needed or wanted, but once they had it, they couldn't imagine living without it, and then they couldn't wait to give it away. That's what you do. That's what you're passionate about. That's exactly what you're passionate about. You just nailed our whole profile right there. That's exactly what it looks like. And you use tools like law and all the training, different things to bring that to bear. But that's the core, that's the essence. That's the atmosphere of what you're passionate about. Anyway, how do we get all, I don't know how we got into the flower shop. That's me. It's dangerous when I go, Sarah, when I go on tangents, we go all over the place, but let's pull it back and let's talk about, so what key legal documents, like obviously consent forms, contracts, you mentioned a few before, should every aesthetic practice have in place? That's a pretty broad question. So again, to our listeners, you're hearing great stuff here, some good things to grab a hold of. Remember, you can re-listen to this, but I just encourage you to try and capture a couple of things you could start doing intentionally when you get off this podcast to start changing the way you're doing things if that's what you desire to do. So yeah, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, one key thing every practice needs to have, no matter what state you're in, no matter what services you're offering, is a set of treatment protocols and procedures, which you can get from us, you can get from other places, where it's kind of like the standard operating manual, what your medical staff is supposed to do and not do. So, what's the maximum number of wrinkle relaxer you put in somebody's forehead? Or do you do filler in somebody's nose or not? Do you do incision of I don't know, pimples, things like that, right? So this book will be something important for you if you ever have a legal problem in many different ways, because you could always point to it and say, well, we had these standards, they were followed or not followed. And then to the medical inspectors, you could always say, well, we have these standards. It's not that we're just kind of operating and everyone's deciding whatever they want to do. So the protocols book is really important. the other thing that's really important is having the right contracts between all the different stakeholders in your practice. So between you and the medical director, between you and your staff, between you and your landlord, between you and your vendor that you bought your laser from, having the right contracts, not just like no contracts or any contracts. Sometimes the type of contract you need depends a lot on your state. Some states you need what's called a management services organization and a management services agreement. Some states you just need a medical director contract. Some states you need to file things with the board. Some states you don't. Some states you need an inspection. Some you don't. So it's definitely different per state. But if you have the protocols in place and you have these key contracts between you and the stakeholders in your practice, you're already going to be in a good place.
So what I hear you saying is that obviously there's a due diligence part on each practice owner to look at it respectively to where they're practicing, the state they're practicing, the municipality, and recognizing that uniqueness, and having somebody who can speak to the legal landscape of the area and where you're practicing and where you potentially could be practicing. If you're moving out of state, if you're doing cross-state things, you're doing something from one state to another, I'm sure that has implications too from a legal perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And training your staff that if somebody comes from a regulator to your door and says and identifies themselves as someone from the medical board or nursing board, you don't have to talk to them. You could say, hey, we're represented by lawyers, talk to them. Here's their information. So having that in place will protect you a lot from giving over records that you didn't have to, or saying things that maybe you meant it one way, but it was heard a different way. Or you said, oh yeah, like my doctor owns 50% of the practice, where you thought that was the right thing to say, but maybe in your state that's not allowed.
Really good about you. Again, these little lines you just heard Sarah just say, we're represented by lawyers. You want to write that down and have that in your little index card. There's things like that you want before. It's like before you want to have those in place before it has. Like in the winter here in Canada, in the first snowfall, get big snow, I usually take my car out. I got 4-wheel drive and all that stuff. But I just spin it around in the parking lot. It's fun, but that's not really my primary motivation. I want to feel the skid, because when I'm driving down the road and the car goes into a bit of a skid, I've already felt it. So I'm not surprised by it. So I can drive through it, which is the proper way to do it. Where if I haven't felt it, unfortunately, that's where many accidents happen. People react to it and grab the wheel, and next thing you're heading into oncoming traffic. So that's what I'm hearing Sarah say, is like, this is about, you need to feel this. You need to know, well, if this happens, here's our response. If this happens, here's our response. If this happens, here's our response. I love that. I think that's a beautiful, and it's not that complex that at that level. It's more, it's just a blend of reasonable protection against people that might have an agenda that's contrary to yours.
Yeah, and I think I don't like to use like fear-based selling or exaggerating or trying to make things complicated when they're not. The legal stuff for protecting your practice is really straightforward. You just have to invest in an expert to help you put it together. It's not rocket science. Just like injecting Botox is not rocket science, but still, if I was to just use a YouTube video to do it, it wouldn't be good. So it's the same thing, right? And it would also be illegal if I was to do it on somebody else. So I think that it's worth the investment. And having been in the business owner's shoes myself so many times, I know firsthand, like it's hard making the investment in some of these things. But it pays for itself tenfold.
Yeah, it's in my coaching world, when I'm working with leaders, the whole idea is I'm trying to help them lead themselves well so they can lead others well, so they can go home at night and feel good about how they handled themselves and others, period. And what I'm hearing Sarah say in that legal realm is the same thing. Like, I don't want to be thinking, I wonder if I'm not there, if someone's going to say something they shouldn't. Well, if there's a structure in play for that, then you don't need to worry about that. And that anxiety doesn't need to come home and disrupt your family.
Exactly.
I got one more question for you. And it's kind of just like kind of looking out forward. And how do you see legal regulations in aesthetics evolving? And what should business owners do to stay ahead?
Well, I think I see two different paths. One is I do see more regulation coming because the pace of adaptation of new technologies and new things coming out is accelerating. So there are a lot more treatments now than they were even 2, 3 years ago. And there are adverse events. There have been some patient deaths. So I think several states have regulations pending that would limit who can do what treatments and just have additional constraints on this practice. At the same time, the FDA currently has said that they're very interested in making things like stem cells and exosomes and things like that more accessible to people. So, and the FDA has said that, or the new leader of the FDA has said that he doesn't like big pharma and he's trying to, increase competition, all that stuff. So I do think that we will see a lot more new treatments coming and new treatments hopefully get approved. But at the same time, different states will come out with regulations saying, like, to do this treatment, you need these qualifications. Whereas right now, many states have nothing.
Some more regulations really to bring sounds like more consistency to protecting the interests of all parties. And then, which is good, the good news, I had the FDA say, hey, let's not focus on big pharma. Let's focus on you, the small practice owner, and give you more things to help set you up for success.
Mm-hmm.
I like that outlook.
I think, yeah, if they do what they say they're going to do, I think it'll be good. But, we'll see. There's a lot of potential change happening now in the U.S. So we will see.
Yes, there is. Yes, we don't want to go into that neighborhood, but wouldn't we love to? But just as we kind of, is there any last thought you'd like to share with our listeners, Sara?
This is a great business overall with lots of opportunity. And sometimes there'll be some bumps in the road and most of them could be overcome. So I think that just having the right support in place makes all the difference, whether, you choose us or someone else. But just keep going. That's my advice. My advice is like, it's not one of my favorite quotes is it's not the strongest of the species that survive. It's the most adaptable to change. And I think that's really true for this space as well. Just don't give up, even if you're facing a problem. Okay, then maybe today's the day to call the lawyer finally. That's okay. Most of the time, it could be overcome.
Thank you. Love that. Well, as our time is coming to an end, and thank you so much, Sara, for joining us today and sharing your insight and your best practices and tips for us. I want to take a moment to thank our listeners. We appreciate every one of you. Big thank you also goes out to our sponsor, Echo Marketing, who are experts in digital marketing for aesthetic practices. And speaking of marketing, here's today's marketing moment. Do you know the number of new patients you received last month from Google Organic Marketing? If you don't know this, it is very important to learn about and implement call and patient tracking to access it and use it to grow your business. A great opportunity for sure. And speaking of opportunity, I want to remind you of the free digital marketing consultation I mentioned to you at the beginning of our podcast that's being made available to help you with your digital marketing planning and activation. As mentioned, you can go ahead and book your free consultation by going to businessaesthetics, one word, .org/MSM. You should find that as well where you picked up this podcast. It should be there as well. So for me, when I have an offer like that come to me, I kind of ask myself two questions. I alluded to it earlier in our podcast. First question is, what's at risk to do this? Well, just my time, because it's free. The second question is, what's at risk if I don't? Well, that's something you have to weigh yourself. If you're not a marketing expert, then this might be a great thing. If you are, then perhaps not. But I'll leave that with you. If you like our podcast, please share it with your friends and colleagues. What a great opportunity to set someone else up for success. Also, please don't forget to leave us a review. We love reviews. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and on behalf of Sara, wishing all of you an amazing week ahead.
Thank you.